Hello, the purpose of this video is to explain the underlying concepts of Appster. This video is just over 6 minutes long. How does Appster work? Appster consists of two main components, App Builder and App Player. App Builder is used by developers to build user interfaces, and App Player is used by users to run the applications that you have built. These applications are stored entirely within an Appster database. An App Builder is the tool for building these. An Appster database is simply a SQL database with all the database objects required for Appster. Users use App Player to run these applications, but they don't modify the data in the Appster database. There is an easy deployment system for applications, or parts of applications, to maintain separate development, test and live environments. So, now to concepts. An application written in Appster is simply referred to as an app. The definition of apps is stored within a SQL database, not on your PC or shared drive, so backing up is simply a case of adding the Appster database to your SQL backup job. An app contains two types of object. Connections. These allow apps to connect to SQL databases. In essence, they are named connection strings. When stored in the Appster database, they are encrypted. Forms. These allow the developer to develop the interface for the users to enter and modify data with. Effectively, a form is the unit of development within Appster, and could be considered to be the same as a source file in a traditional development environment. Connections are self-explanatory. They simply define where to acquire data from and where to write it back to. Let's have a closer look at forms. As stated before, forms are the unit of development within Appster. Forms are checked out from the Appster database by a developer for editing and checked back in again after editing. The developer's AD account is used for identification purposes. A full history of changes is kept. Unlike SSRS reports, forms are not only responsible for displaying data in a read-only form, but also for letting users add, modify and delete data. So when you run a form, it has a mode associated with it. At design time, the developer indicates which modes are applicable. Forms also contain queries. Queries are initially run when a form is loaded. A query can be defined as being the same for all modes, but mode-specific versions can be added. The mode-specific versions must return the same names and column types as the core query. Additionally, queries can have expressions embedded in them. Expressions are similar to those in SSRS or Excel and can obtain values from the form environment. Also, forms can be parameterized. When a form is called, it is opened for a specific mode and parameter values can be passed to it. Parameters have design time values, as they can be referenced within expressions. In this way, expressions can be evaluated at design time for testing purposes. Forms, obviously, contain controls, which have properties much like SSRS. Some of the properties of controls can be defined as expressions. Let's take a closer look at controls. Designing a form involves laying out controls on a design surface. There are 10 types of control, which are listed here. Most of the controls, except buttons, can show values that are sourced from expressions, and therefore from the form environment. This means that they can be obtained either from the results of queries, properties of other controls, values of parameters, or actually can just be hard-coded. When a form is opened, no matter what mode it is in, controls are initialized to their value property. Some controls require lists of data to operate, and obtain those lists from queries. All controls support one or more types of event, which, if fired, will execute a macro. Macros. Macros are very similar to SQL jobs, except they are started by events, rather than the SQL agent. Effectively, they are a series of steps that can either succeed or fail. There are a variety of step types which are covered in another tutorial. An event can either run the same macro for all form modes, or it is possible to define mode-specific macros. For example, in this form, the user is adding, editing, or deleting a customer depending on which mode the form has been called with. As a result, the OK button performs a different macro depending on the form mode. Thanks for watching this tutorial. A good next step would be to walk through the tutorial called Building an Example App.